Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon listeners. It's me Sulaiman Ben Sware coming back on Facebook Live. If you bear me a minute, let me share this video and we can start the program. Okay, thank you very much. It's me, Sulaiman Ben Sware. Today is it Wednesday the 26th? Wednesday the 26th of January 2022. The time just gone 21 minutes past 5 in the afternoon in Birmingham, England. We're going to explore a bit of geopolitics to look at the situation in West Africa and then how it might affect or pose a threat to our national security. And by looking at this, we will have a historic perspective of the geopolitics in West Africa and look at the Cold War, the unannounced Cold War, which is back. And down the line, we'll make it more relevant to the Gambia. We will look at the situation in Mali, briefly, in Guinea-Conakry, in Burkina Faso, and likely what's going to happen in Ivory Coast, likely what is going to happen in Guinea-Bissau, and we will look at the advantages in the democracy in Senegal, what the elections, what do you call it, the elections, the local government elections, the referendum on Macky Sall, and what good it is to the Senegalese democracy and the stability of West Africa for that matter, or Senegambia for that matter. And we'll start to look at it as we have seen in the late 80s, early 90s, the strength of coup d'etats, which was modeled we see it from Nigeria going to Ghana, and to Sierra Leone, to the Gambia, and the civil war that erupted, in from Liberia, later got into Sierra Leone, later got into Ivory Coast, and so on. That point is very important to note. The coup d'etats were going on in other African countries. In Liberia, there had been a coup d'etat, what brought Doe into power, and people that understand what actually happened would see the Cold War. That actually informed that coup d'etat to happen. But later on, due to Doe entrenching himself, it led to a military invasion by insurgents from Liberians, but with other West Africans. Then we can understand from what happened in Liberia how trouble in other countries might end up becoming your trouble. And that trouble involving West Africans, we've seen it, catch up to Sierra Leone, catch up to Ivory Coast, and nearly got up into Guinea. But we have seen it, in fact, Gambians, dissidents from Liberia, attack the Gambia, and it could have been another case of a civil war. Just to give you the where we want to go with this, how we want to look at things. But the situation kind of stabilized in the early 2000s. It kind of stabilized, and people having hope, saying, "Oh, democratization now is coming to West Africa." We have seen countries like Sierra Leone coming back into multi-party elections working out. We have seen it happen in Ivory Coast. We've seen it happen in other West African countries. And until 2016, we saw it in Gambia. But again, something have informed that narrative. Something have informed that narrative. Because instability, it's not only what happened domestically. There are other things that informs the instability coming from outside your boundary. It might be your next door neighbor or in the sub-region. But again, business interest from outside your distance or neo-colonial interests might fuel a coup d'etat or might incentivize a coup d'etat. And people that organize coup d'etats have to factor these things when they plan a coup d'etat, whether the domestic audience are going to entertain a coup d'etat. That's why it's always important to emphasize on good governance. First, the people who organize coup d'etat have to look and test or look to measure the popularity, what popularity you're going to get. Now, that's why where coup d'etats happen, it's normally something have been brewing up, and these soldiers would take an opportunity and to strike. Some probably when they say they doing it meaningfully, others are just opportunists. They just want to have a grip of power in order to do what other people were doing, and this is mainly the case. And the other thing you have to think about is what sub-region, what's going to happen. ECOWAS, or the next day, in this case of Gambia, how is Senegal going to receive this? In the case of other countries, they think of their neighbors, how they're going to receive this. If you in Sierra Leone or in Liberia or Guinea, you think of the Mano River, how they're going to receive this. But there's another aspects. The donor community, the international community, how they're going to receive this. Now, these are three things that people who organize coup d'etats do think about. They need to have these things figured out in order for a coup d'etat to be successful. They need domestic support, political. When a coup d'etat happens, the first 24 hours are very important. So things that people don't see is what goes behind the scenes. How the people that organize it, how do they hold up to each other to stop any kind of incursion from the other forces, to take them out or to counter them. That's their initial strategy. Once they stabilize that within hours, what they do to try to reassure the public so that the public will not come out and go after them. How do they do that? They go for the influential people, politicians. These are things done behind the scenes. They go and consult politicians. Some of these things, they consult them even before the coup d'etat. They might not tell them we're going to overthrow, but what they call sounding, they go and sound them out. And in this case, it might not even be the soldiers sounding them out. The agents of the soldiers will sound them out. Sound out the opposition. How would they be receptive of a coup d'etat? Sound out the press. How would they be receptive of coup d'etat? Sound out opinion leaders. Sound out civil society. They do sounding out in a manner. There's a way they do that. They don't. It's not like an open consultation, or they come in passing to do it. There's a strategy that you use to sound this out, to check the public opinion. That's why in the first 24 hours, you have to try and consolidate on that. After you make your security and these things, you have disposed. That's why it's always in a country. You see, coup d'etats possible where there's a sole guarantor of power. If the separation of power works, parliament is active, civil society is active, the press is active, and they are very vibrant, you dare not think of it. Because to consolidate power will be very difficult. But if the sole person is the incumbent, the president, everything around, resolve around the president, what do? You go for the president. Before in Africa, what happened is you leave the president to travel. Then you just take over certain installations and take over the media and announce yourself. Now people have realized that it might be bring you trouble because of the president might be still influential and get support, to dislodge you. What they do now, they go and target the president himself, where he lives, or ambush him or something like that. That's the person they need first. The ministers and everybody else run away. The other forces, the senior people run away. Now, once in the first 24 hours, when you start to consolidate, I'm not teaching people about coup d'etat, this is open out there. I just want people to understand the importance of democracy. If we are truly democratic, if people are aware, if the institutions are functional, parliament is functional, politicians are functional, opinion leaders are functional, a country would be stable. Then that government will be functional, that government will be held to account. Now, the minute they do that, they behind the scenes, they start to consolidate. But as I said, if the people realize that, if you allow a coup d'etat, you are technically giving your rights to a bunch of individuals who seek to take power without your notice, without your approval. They're seizing power. Because first thing they're going to do is the constitution is going to go out. The Magna Carta itself, they're going to throw out. Your rights are gone. The parliament that represents you, it's gone. What do they bring in? A degrees and a council that they constitute themselves in order to do things. That's why it's dangerous to think that a coup d'etat will be a solution to your problems. At times, it might. In Mali, we have seen it work before, where temporarily soldiers took over and rearranged things and give it back. But it's not a solution that we should be even thinking about. We can always, as people, bring about change in a peaceful and democratic manner. I emphasize. Now, that's why it's important for people to be aware of their rights and duties. But again, that's why it's important for institutions to be allowed to function well, to be independent and function well. The press needed to be vibrant, informed. The parliament need to be vibrant, informed and do their duties. And the other sectors need to be as well. Now, after the 24 hours, or within the 24 hours, another thing is happening. They are consulting or continuing. Consultation, sounding might have been done before. Now they get the representative of those countries, the ambassadors. But what most Gambians don't realize that in any foreign embassy, you have people that works as intelligence. People who are connected. These are the people that they reach out first. The ambassador would be using these people as a loop because they don't know whether this thing is going to be successful or not. They don't want to show their hands. And the minute things started to show up, and they go in there to protect their interests, and they will give certain demands to the pool leaders. Make sure you keep it this way. Make sure you keep it that way. If this is within 48 hours, we will see what we can do. And so on. We are not going to intervene. We are not going to do this. We are not going to give a message. It goes on. They need that external support. But again, once they constitute a government too, they need support, because all these countries that are going through coup d'etat, they need external support in order for their economies to function. They need international relationships in order to function as a state. Then that's why we have to consider that things that happen in our country, domestic, matters, but two, things that happen outside our countries, the boundaries matters, but again, in the international community matters. Then we have to understand, and read. That's why leaders should read to understand the geopolitics right now. A lot of things are happening. European Union, America is distracted or are engaged with Ukraine and Russia and China. Do they really have time for Africa? Just a bit. Just a bit. Now that's why this is a time that things are likely to happen in Africa, because these powers are engaged into something else. These are worrying times. But there are other things that we have to look at. You see, let's say during the 80s, during year 2000 going on, what do most African countries were depending on? The countries that West African countries, they have an incentive to go to multi-party democracy and to accept all these the mechanisms or put by the ECOWAS. You have to have a constitution, you have to have a two-term mandate inside. They allow all those things because what they were trying to attract the support from the international community. because these were the measures. You have the Millennium Development Goal, you have the GAWA, I think it's called the GAWA, the trade, this thing with America, and you have the EU kind of fundings and other things coming in. They consider these things. And it was like an incentives. But what happens is, when these people become democratically elected, and they serve their 2 terms, within the 2 terms, what happens is, they are controlled by a cabal. State capture happens. And the state capture becomes so rich, so powerful. Now they disregard what else happens. Now, they will try to manipulate the system for the chosen candidate, the incumbent who gave them the opportunity, who gave them the environment to function, to stay in power, regardless of what it is. Now they will disregard the constitution and they go for constitutional amendment. That is a coup d'etat. You see, this is where West Africa, ECOWAS has failed, because they condone these coup d'etats by democratic elected leaders. And they tampered with elections, they tampered with referendums, they do things in order to stay. And most so by France, because the thing we have to understand, most West African countries are former French colony. But again, we'll come to France. They're not only interested, and even in history, they're not only interested in French-speaking countries. They have interest in English-speaking countries, and they too try to influence those countries in order to have their trade deals made. Now, in this situation, these countries lose their democratic credence. Now the opposition is suppressed. Civil society is suppressed. Now they have violated the constitution. They violated laws. They don't want to leave power. Now they have created oligarchs within themselves. Their families, the first lady become an arm of government. And the first lady family become an institution. You see, in every country that's why it goes. Then the president family become another institution. Now they are so wealthy, they don't want to leave power, because if they leave power, they are in trouble, because the law will go after them. Some countries have tried even to look for successors, to groom someone to take over. But you groom someone to take over depending that you have not committed crimes that are to a magnitude of corruption or human rights. Because that person would want to save himself. That person want to distance himself. That person want to entrench himself. I give an example of this. In Mauritania. In Mauritania it happened. I think the former defense minister was picked. You know, whenever Africa gives someone a position of defense minister, they trust them. And this is why he was groomed. And when he took over, what he did, he went for the predecessor straight away. And technically disarm him and put him under control. In Angola, again, the former defense minister, Angola, the same thing. I mean, the family of he went for the family of the president, former president. Technically, he went for the family for the president, and in order to maintain control. Everything else they agree, he moved out of that. And we are seeing that now in Azerbaijan. It's far away, but Azerbaijan. Now, what happens is people don't even trust to hand over. But if you look at the example in Senegal, Senghor handed over. He's never been prosecuted, never scared of anything. Abdou Diouf handed over, never prosecuted, never feared anything. Because of they did things better and they were comfortable and they can go in and out or live in this thing. But Ablaye Wade, this thing, his son was prosecuted. Now there's a precedence there. Now what's going to happen to Macky Sall and his family is another thing. Whether he loses power or not. That's why he's scared of losing power. That's why he's looking for a way to attack them. But not only him, but you have seen that in Ivory Coast. We saw that in Guinea-Conakry. We saw that in other countries. And what does it tell us? Democracy then goes away. Because the minute you do that, you can call up elections and say that, yeah, we have democracy. But no, the minute you overthrow a constitution, you have lost the democratic credence, and anything you have is a resemblance of democracy. What you have done, your legitimacy, you have undermined. And now it depends on the forces. I mean the different sectors in the country, that might challenge, and how they're going to challenge you. In a country where institutions are not very powerful, the army would be the only institution that was likely to take you on. But countries where you have the institutions powerful, civil society and other institutions powerful, you will end up, deposed by an unrest. Now, if we understand then the geopolitics of things, we come to a bit of a history of the Cold War. And for some, I know everybody would know what Cold War is, but just to elaborate that, this is the situation we had when, the West and the East were competing. Imperialist powers were competing. And during that time, mainly it was Russia and the United States, England and others, France, allied to United States. But we have Cuba, we have China, we have North Korea and others allied to the Russians. And it was about capitalism, it was about socialism, communism, and so on and so forth. And some country, there was something called the non-allied movements, which was technically just to have something else to associate with, but it was not that powerful. But people, or South and South cooperation, they used different things. What the Cold War was between these two entities. And they were playing, and obviously Africa is always a playing ground for them. Not only Africa, this is any third world country, in South America and others. And what ensued was wars. Coup d'etats and wars, coup d'etats and wars, coup d'etats and wars. Yes, the Western democracies themselves were sponsoring coup d'etats in order to assure their influence. And ironically, the communists were supporting liberation struggles, but again supporting popular leaders who were voted for, by their people, particularly Lumumbas and others were supported by the Eastern blocs. But what happened? The West that talked about democracy would go around and kill them off in order to install someone they can control. Technically for the resources of Africa and for the geostrategic position of that country. You see, these two things are very important to note. Because Gambia would always think of our resources, we haven't got resources. That's not true. We are geostrategically positioned at the mouth, along the Atlantic, which means that we are directly as the crow flies to America, directly as the crow flies to Europe. And when it comes to location, geostrategic positions are very important. What causes the Russians to support Cuba to the extent of wanted to fight another third world war was because of the occupation of Cuba by Russian missiles, because of what it was a geostrategic position for Russia to be able to have their missiles that close to the United States. Now we'll come to that. Now, obviously, resources is mainly what we focus on. The resources. And we know it was because of resources we went through to slavery, colonialism, and so on. And neocolonialism is the same thing. And it's as brutal as it comes. I'll tell you, the civil wars and everything are not in absence of Western powers. Now, not in absence of Western industrial powers. If you understand the wars in the civil war in Liberia, what it ended up, it's about resources. But what we see is the tribal. What end up in Sierra Leone is the resources. And I give you examples. I have experience in this. And they play very dirty. An example I'll give you is a contract between Sunlight International, a mercenary outfit from United Kingdom, and the Sierra Leonean government, under which were Sierra Leonean government, which were under sanctions on the UN of embargo, arms embargo, and so on. The United Kingdom, under the ethical foreign policy of Robin Cook and Tony Blair and others, which they shouted when they were in opposition, they knew about this contract been signed by an Indian UK national, a diamond dealer, with the Sierra Leonean government through Sunlight International to intervene and to supply arms to Sierra Leonean government. They looked the other way. They facilitated that. Because what happened is most of these mercenary companies are run by people who have connection with government. They were former government officers, either civil servants or they are former soldiers. And because you don't see the only face, the face might be a soldier touting there, but it's a company. They are run by different people, lobbyists and everything else is in it. Now, if the United Kingdom sees an opportunity here that they cannot, as a country, go directly, they might push a mercenary company or what we call private security or what we call private intelligence, these things to operate. And they would get facilitated by their embassies and other things and their intelligence and others to do things. You see, Africa will become a mercy of this politic of resource mobilization for this country. Unless we wise up to understand this, let us not just have a short view of things, thinking everything is just Gambia, everything is just Senegal. No, we have to look beyond that in order to understand our problems. That's why I want this conversation to happen. And historically, you know, the Cold War and geopolitics, let's look at West Africa. You know, the Biafra War. Most of what kept the Biafra War and what was behind it was France. France was sponsoring the Biafrans because of resource. And what you remember is Cameroon, English and French Cameroon, and the geology of the Niger Delta, which connects to Cameroon oil. Now, if the separatist movement had independence, what happens is French companies, Total and other, would be the first to benefit from that independence and everything else. Now they will prop up the government. That's why they are popping up, sending mercenaries to the to support the Biafrans. And do you think it's stopped? No, it still will be going on. Does not mean that the Americans are not doing the same thing somewhere else, but these are the realities. Just to give you a perspective of in 1966 what was happening in Nigeria. But what else is happening in Nigeria? Do you think all this country is only about Nigerians? No, there are other interests. Who are the investors? Who are the people even benefiting more from it? Multinational companies. And the corrupt systems and everything they do. I mean, to give you a perspective of that. But let's bring it home a bit. 1981. To understand the geopolitics here in the Gambia, 1981, we recognize the domestics of it. The Cold War have to be, I mean, we'll bring the perspective of the Cold War. Gambia became independence 1965 and moving on. Remember, 65 to 1980, it's not a long time. And countries, once they have their independence, they need a transition. What was the transitional period we did not have? We did not. This is the failures we do have. Transitional periods that are the time that we build our institutions. Rather than building our institutions, what we did was started to instead of making the cake, we started to share the ingredients that make the cake. You know, that's where we started the political polarization. You know, instead of bringing all political parties, then mainly two political parties, UP and PPP, together into cabinet, no, PPP brought UP candidates, MPs, into cabinet by them asking them to cross carpet to join PPP. Now, the opposition become marginalized. Civil society become marginalized through what? Victimization, through people even being incentivized to go to studies, try them to get out of the country. Because of once they go, it's not coming back. It's not as it is now. Once you leave, it was difficult to come back. And or when they acquire those privileges or education or rights, whatever you call them, when they come back, they become different people. They become parts of the bourgeoisie. Their radicalness would have gone. They are young people. They are radical, and the people who are radical and were exploring or even find or have a thinking different from what it was. Most of them were civil servants and especially teachers. Remember, when we talk about civil servants, mainly in Gambia, it's more of teachers. Teachers and other areas, they were the so-called radical leftists, communists, socialists, and other things. And these people were marginalized as well. They don't have a voice. And any other organization that tried to be vibrant, whatever, it was suppressed and it was banned. I mean, we did not give the environment for these things, and complacency happened, and corruption ensued, and tension grew. But a coup d'etat would not have happened. One would not have happened. All these things could have happened. We could have scammies, we could have moved on and other things. Probably down the line, it would have happened by other things. But what I'm trying to emphasize here now is the Cold War. Coup d'etat would not have happened in a sense that the other ingredients that needed for the coup d'etat was absent. This was the geopolitics, the sub-regional, the sub-regional politics or affairs. Apart from Guinea-Bissau, which was a communist, we could have allowed, yeah, but they were not affluent. They were not, effective in even supporting someone else. They had their own internal struggles, their troubles. They already had their first coup d'etat, and now they're dealing with their, other Confucianist struggles. And again, this was at the downtime of the Cold War again. Communism, Russia is fighting because we had the world recessions in the 70s. Russia is, struggling and to maintain its boundaries and so on. They have challenges. Then what happened here is the only country that might have something else is Senegal. And we all seen the role they played in 81. But another thing that they have, the Cold War, what the Cold War did was Libya. Because Libya was an ally to, or they allied themselves to the communists. And Libya was looking for trouble, looking for influence. That's why people who say to Gaddafi try to liberate Africa also, I think it's just confused. They don't understand what Gaddafi have represented. Yes, in certain times or certain moments, Gaddafi would do the right things. But most cases, he does them for a reason. And what happened in the Gambia here was, he came and invested in Africa, which was great. He invested in Gambia. And one of those investments was the Gambia Transport Corporation, which was Gambia Jamahiriya Transport Corporation. That was the GPTC. He invested in that, and with other promises of other investments. But he wanted to dictate a narrative or dictate the government how to govern, because we had investment coming. Because Gambia have seen the potential of tourism now, trying to open up tourism, and one of the engines to support our tourist expansion was by bringing a brewery, Julbrew, like beverage. Yes, is part of it, because when you look at the markets, then Gambia have to import brewed, for brewers from outside of Gambia. It becomes very expensive, and the market in the Gambian market becomes very expensive, and mass tourism was kind of will be difficult to do. Then one of the strategies was to invite the Germans to invest in a brewery. That's how the Gambia had the Julbrew come into the country, and now in order to be a part of the economic development. Carnifin estate Carnifin was demarcated as the industrial area, and that's how manufacturing started in the Gambia. And Gaddafi, with all these things, he started to raise issues with Julbrew. But Gambians have to realize something. Julbrew was a default. But already he have raised issues with Senegal. And technically, he was trying to control West African countries. He was trying to become a super African power, whatever you call them, because he was given money. And at that time, he was having problems with Senegal, and obviously he tried Gambia thinking that let me flex my muscles, and the government said no. We are not going to stand for this. Obviously, he pulled his support. Then the Germans, due to the excuse or default that the Julbrew was blamed for the diplomatic problems, then the Germans came in to support the GPTC, which is the Gambia Transport, chain to the Gambia Public Transport Corporation. And the GPTC by capacity, be it for providing the vehicles, manned vehicles, providing the capacity, technical support, training, and everything, financing, and so on. That's how we had the GPTC. Then it was 2 days. Gaddafi started to interfere politically and obviously give the sounding, and Koukoy have been to Libya and so on and so forth, and this is how it will happen. Then without an external the Cold War, it would not have happened. Now, that's why I said what is happening now, we have to see the Cold War in it coming again, and this now is different. But again, we come on to 1994. 1994, I know it's quite difficult to say, because most people will see us conspirators. But I can tell you, it's not a conspiracy. It's a shame that the TRRC failed to establish the causes of the coup. Because again, they look narrow. They look, they were short-sighted, looking at what the army or what happened the day of the coup. But it's not. Coup d'etats don't happen the day it happened. Coup d'etats happen months and years before. Coup d'etats happen because other factors. They never ask for the other factors present. Yes, even some narratives came out. They never explored those narratives. And I'll tell you this. The coup d'etat would not have happened without America interfering in our internal matters. And I give you pointers. We could have been explored and look. And there's certain things I cannot even share. But I can give you pointers. If we realized the Gambia, if we look at Gambia again, in the approaching to the late 90s, Gambia government's policies kind of move away from the policies we have. Gambia government started to explore other relationship, and one of these relationships was our relationship with Iran. I know Gambia, most people never realize this. Because it's not kind of a very publicized, very written, but some of us who were around or were conscious enough have seen or knew about these things. And Jawara, I think, visited Iran in 1989, around the 1990s. Let's say around the 1990s, with a big delegation. Business delegation, and obviously with expatriates. And part of this visit was to explore the possibility of a refinery, Iranian refinery, a possibility of Iran exploring, exploration for gas and petrol, because there's politics in exploration. And if you look at, they are kind of a monopoly with the oil exploration companies, because most of them are European. They kind of create a market, and they want to control the market, they want to control pricing, they want to control a lot of things. And the coast of West Africa and so on was kind of left to be dormant. So that they can explore, they can use their investments which are already in the Arabian Peninsula and others. Apart from the exploration already started in the Niger Delta and some other West African countries by Total, and West Africa French-speaking countries in Gabon and other places, hardly there was no exploration being done in Africa. Any results they come out with the negative results, not to invest. Then, at that time, obviously, Jawara was looking for resources and explore with Iran. The Americans were not happy. Americans are not happy. I spoke to diplomats who were part of that government who knew about it, because I went on to investigate some of these things I knew about. And I cannot share that, but there's a diplomat who is about to write a book, and I think it's going to come out in this book. But let's put this. Some of the signs what happened is, towards in 1993 towards 1994, Andrew Winter came to the Gambia, and people that knew the background of Andrew Winter, he was always where trouble needed to be manufactured. Just as from Gambia, I think he went to China, because they're trying to manufacture some troubles in China. But Andrew Winter was in the Gambia, and people, some of us in Bakau have seen him interact. Before Andrew Winter and someone else, I'm not going to name, and there was another CIA operative who was operating in the Gambia. I don't want to name because of the person is still active, and I want to preserve my life. And you know, these people were active in the Gambia, and when they were operating, at times people don't even know what they were doing. But certain things did happen, like the interest Andrew Winter started to have in agitating the problems in the country. And Saudawda have said this thing in private to certain individuals, individuals about the behavior of the Americans leading to 1994. He have really raised his concern privately. And Andrew Winter did many things, and one of those was the press with Observer. Best, he with the Observer started to really agitate the government, and the government was really irritated. Many times even went against Observer. And not only that, and to the extent of the USAID coming out in the open, which was not technically, which was not usual for USAID coming out to make conditions openly. In the press, taking advice like Gambia have to recover the AMRC, the commercial bank liabilities, if not the sum, putting pressure. You know, that was kind of creating a storm, a momentum, a storm for something. And obviously, as I said, they can only do as much. But obviously, the failure of the PPP was, again, Jawara stayed long in power, and they didn't have a succession plan, and everybody want to succeed Jawara, Shehu Sabali, Bibi Dabo, and in fighting within them from the and so from their Mansokonko meeting, Congress and so on, it tear up the government, it tear up the PPP. You see, and people were watching, and all that corruption that was happening. You know, when Asantix wrote about Shehu Sabali, exposed Shehu Sabali, cooperative union, cooperative bankruptcy and everything else. Shehu Sabali took Asantix to the courts. Asantix won the case. You know, Shehu Sabali was promoted technically. All this created, part of these things. But again, the Americans did not help by putting pressure on Saudawda. And all these pressures and so on, other things that went behind the scenes, and so that 1994 happened. It did not just happen in a vacuum. But let's bring it up. And towards after 2010 coming up, you know, the Arab Spring period. And I know most people think the Arab Spring was just something that happened out of a vacuum. People were just angry. In Tunisia, a chap was just frustrated and set himself on fire, and the country erupted, and regime change happened. And in Egypt, the strongest aristocratic government and dictator, because of police violence, maltreating student, and the country erupted, it happened. No. That's not what is. There are always external forces. You know, yes, civil society is kind of been used in many cases in order to breed the storm. telling you these things from my background as intelligence officers. We know how we manipulate situations. Civil society and the political classes and other things can be used in order to breed up. And obviously, again, things cannot happen. The vacuum must be there. And the vacuum here, people have to understand Egypt's strategic position. Mubarak was really ill. He was all ill, and there's no succession plan. And America wanted to create an orderly, and it went out of hand. But they managed it again. Now they got their man back into power. They got Sisi. You see, they were behind the scenes, and there's a program in BBC explaining how Obama dealt with Egypt. there's a program on Obama. If you watch that, you will kind of see the when things were unfolding, what the State Department was doing and how they interfered in the internal affairs of Egypt, and for the outcome that came out. But the Islamists that took over naturally and faltered. And what happened again? You think the Islamists were taken out by the army alone, or the civil strife that opposed them? No, they were external forces again. Then in Africa, if we want to be stable, if we want to build our democracy and move on, we have to factor these things. But as I said, these things cannot destabilize us if we have a good governance. If people have confidence in their government, if people, the resource sharing, distribution is inequitable, things like that would ensure that people would be jealously guarding their freedom, jealously guarding their peace and tranquility. But if that fails, democracy fails, this is what happened. Then these things went on happening. Remember, the Arab Spring went on and it was catching up. It was catching up. But something stopped the Arab Spring coming to sub-Saharan Africa. Because of now, the Western intelligence and Western government realized that Al-Qaeda, ISIS are using the storm that is coming in order to take over power. If you take your time and look at it again, how ISIS and Al-Qaeda were started and everything else, in the sub-Saharan Africa, threatening governments and where we are today, and we'll touch on to that again. And someone was very smart in this and realized that the Cold War is back on and he needed support. And to show you another example here, when the 1994 coup happened, and you have to look at the position of Taiwan in the 1994, the role Taiwan played for the 1994 coup. I know that people will give narrative that Gambia government, by default, were staff of funds. That's why they, someone, a Gambian somewhere, imagine went, no. There were this CIA operative. This CIA operative was active before 1994. Was very active in 1994. When even Andrew Winter left, he was there because he was overseeing Gambia, but he was not based in the Gambia. He was based in Belgium. But for one reason, he was operating in the Gambia. And this operative, and obviously they know how to devise their things, push, because the forced government, remember the forced government that approached the junta was China. Because at that time, there was a Chinese delegations, or the Chinese ambassador, or designated ambassador was in the country for the Gambia, because Gambia was developing again their relationship with China, because China was doing a lot for the Gambia at that time. 1992, they built the port, you see the port extension, and the program for the port extension was going to be built by China. China, around that time, have given the Gambia government most of those arms that you saw, that the boys used to overthrow, came from China. Most of the new AK-47 came from China. The Chinese stick grenades that you saw the boys hold in 1994 came from China. Most of the RPG, I think all of the RPG came from China. Most of the things came from China. The artilleries and other things, heavy weapons came from China, and China trained these people to use it. Gambia government was having a brilliant relationship with China. But the first 2-3 days, I'm not saying I'm not talking about the behind the scenes, but what came first out of the scenes was the Chinese government, the Chinese representative meeting the junta and promising them he's going to deliver the aid was intended for the other government. He's going to pass it on. But what happened? Then the government to ditch China for what you call it, Taiwan. You see, America play a role there. CIA play a role there. CIA wanted the recognition of Taiwan. CIA play a role in that. I can tell you for sure, because I know the operatives who played that role for Gambia to have this move. Obviously, they don't show their hands. And it happened. And when it happened, we know the money started to flow from this thing. Just show you the geopolitics of things. Now, let's happen. When these things were happening after 2010, 2015, Jammeh, one thing about Jammeh is he understands the geopolitics. Jammeh do look forward to what he does, whether he does it right or wrong. We have to give it to him. He is very strategic. Jammeh, you see, even the going to Equatorial Guinea, giving an example of running to Equatorial Guinea, it's not by accident. It was by design. Jammeh have planned and escaped. Jammeh have seen what was coming, but he was trying to manage it. You see, the pronouncement of the Islamic State was not because of he believed in Islamization, not because of anything. It was a survival mechanism. And this is how it goes. Jammeh had a strategy to weather the storm that was coming in regime change and others. And he had obviously politically he does that move, but now he have to geopolitically he have to consider what he can do, and especially in the Cold War that he saw coming. Jammeh knew there was a Cold War ongoing. What Jammeh did was, he looked at the Islamization. And if you know, there's something called the Islamization project. The Islamization project is not new. Sudan went through it. Pakistan went through it. I can name other countries that went through it. And it comes through from the University of Medina. And it comes through the Wahhabi sect of Islam from Saudi Arabia. It comes to how, because of this sect of Islam, have money coming from the Saudi government. Saudi government are not, they dictate a foreign policy of Saudi Arabia in a sense, because of they use the custodian of moral vouchers and any cultural, whatever you call, and they use those influence to keep the people loyal to the Saudi authorities, the monarchy. Now the monarchy gives them their way by what they need. I give an example. Most of the Saudi citizens arrested for terrorism have been released back to Saudi Arabia. And in the notion that they were going to be in prison in Saudi Arabia, it's a lie. They were living in 5-star complex. They were paid good money, and they were all terrorists in other countries. But because of the Wahhabis, how powerful they are, and because of what they were doing is in accordance to what the Wahhabis want, they were taken care of. When the average Saudi citizens are struggling, dying of diabetic, dying of high blood, they cannot even access medical things. These are things that governments will be surprised to know. The average Saudian are dying for treatable disease. But they can have billions and millions spent on jihadism and other things. Now, let's bring it back. Jammeh saw an opportunity here. How can I sustain myself? Islamization. And then he went to the Islamization project. And if people had that remember, that was the time he was very in touch with Sudan, the Sudanese government, because you always have to have someone to shadow. And he was looking at shadowing the Sudanese government to see how things are done in order to have this protection. The other thing he did, I'll come back to Islamization. The other thing he did, it was for the geostrategic position we have in order to lease it out, in order to have a signatory of the Security Council as a backing. If someone with the Security Council veto. This ensured Russia, Gambia, Russian relationship went into that to the extent of opening an embassy in Russia. This is what info. Because when people can remember, before we opened that embassy, Gambia signed a military military cooperation with Russia. And Usman Baji was the CDS, traveled to Russia and they signed this military pact. Okay. Part of the military pact that Gambians don't know was Russia able to access Gambian ports. Their submarines, their warships, and other things to access Gambian ports. At the same time, Gambia refused to sign the pact with America. This was it was a maritime pact. I mean, Gambia was in the beginning, started to receive capacity training and so on. But later on we came out of it. I forgot the pact with America. Gambia came out of it. Jammeh came out of that. Because if he was part of that, he knows that he will be under the watch, full eye with America very directly. Because the early warning system for tsunamis and other things been installed. The joint operational command was sponsored by the Americans, and other things were done by the Americans. But Gambia refused to sign the pact. That pact would have given access to American vessels, American battle vessels, submarines into our waters without notice and so on. Those kind of technicalities. But Jammeh went and signed the pact with Russia. What Jammeh wanted was, if you have the veto power members to support you at the United Nations, you would be insulated by some pressure that comes from the EU and America. But not only that, physical security, you will have equipments, you will have, support, and their presence. The presence of their forces in your soil would deter interference from the West or certain forces. This is what Jammeh was playing at. And if you understand this, you can see it why Syria became a different ball game. Because of they have this presence of Russian troops in their these things and their interests. Because Russia can easily use an excuse that they are protecting their interests in this area, and they move on. Jammeh built on that and was building on that. But let's come back to the Islamic State. What Islamic State was going to give him was so that he can get out. If Jammeh have crossed the 2016 elections, Jammeh was going to declare himself a monarch. Gambia was going to go into a monarchy. And Jammeh could not just have gone into a monarchy without any intellectual positioning or backing. That's why he needed the intellectual influence and positioning of the Islamist Ummah in order to use it as a backing. That's what he was doing. Now, in the course of that, that's why he started to try to look. And we all heard the former Justice Minister, Fatima something, Singate, said that Jammeh did ask him to put up a task force in order to study how to bring our laws, how to bring the system of Islamization. Because this is where Jammeh was struggling. Because of Gambia was not Gambia didn't have access to the Islamic Arabic languages and so on, that he was struggling with. He was looking a way to do it. But again, another thing Jammeh was looking at was the OIC projects. Because if he had the OIC hosted, what the OIC projects was going to do for him, he was going to deliver it on time, and the infrastructure that needed to be boosted in the urban areas would have gone up. Now, the Gambia feel-good factor. You see, Jammeh was scared of Gambians. The Gambian feel-good factor with roads, hotels, and other things, they would kind of be softened. When you want to kill a frog, you don't throw the frog in the boiling water. The frog will come out. What you do is you put them in cold water and put the fire. That's what Jammeh was doing. If he had the projects, if Jammeh was there 2016 and the Islamic or OIC project started, he was going to make sure it delivered. He had the strategy, he did it before, it would be delivered. And you have roads built and everything. The second bit was China. This was the reason Jammeh did Taiwan now. Remember, he did China before. Now, he does not only need the money Taiwan was given. No, he needed more. He needed the veto power of China to support him, Cold War. But not only that, in the he wanted the infrastructure building capacity of China to come into his support. And those projects, that's why the roads and bridges you see in Basset today, they were part of what has been negotiated by Jammeh in order to get our relations with China back. Then, if Jammeh have delivered the OIC with the infrastructure and everything else, Jammeh have delivered the Basset roads and projects and everything else, the economy built up, then Pam declare the OIC, then declare himself a monarch, and Gambia constitution is thrown out and is new, because already he have the people campaigning for him to be chief. But not only that, that's another factor in. Jammeh was building on that the oil exploration in the Gambia would have started, and the fuel would be pumping out. Gambia would have money. They would not have bothered about the World Bank, IMF, the Western countries. His relationship with Russia, with the Arab world, and with the Chinese, and the money pumping out, he could have sustained himself. This was the strategy. Then why did I bring this? To show you how governments do plan by looking outwards, looking at the politics, looking at the Cold War, the other partners that plays in. This is something he understood, and that would have kept him for a long time. That will have kept him for a long time. Remember, he have already consolidated on the army. He have consolidated on the opposition. What he needed to do was just to carry the rest of the Gambian people continue, and the Gambian people will go out there and vote for a referendum that let him be a king. He would have achieved that. And the resources and everything is disposable. He knows it's a bread and butter politics. When they have this much, you can get away with anything. Now, let's come to recent times. The activities recently, and I want Gambians again to focus on something: the role played by international partners. And let's look at now we have a lot of players. You know, when you say Western countries, America and the EU, then you have to count the IMF, World Bank, and other institutions that normally support democratization, or democratization, or what the American and the American and the British government supports, and the French, and they will come into this. The Paris Club and others will come into it, and because of our cousins, the Arabs, our followers, they tend to follow the trend of what these people do. At times they might go out and do their own thing, but they mostly just follow this trend. But what we have changed in the geopolitics here now is China. China became a big factor. Russia became a big factor. Not only that, now we have Turkey becoming a factor. Now we have India becoming a factor. These are all countries that would have resources, that would need our resources, that would need our markets, and especially China and Russia that need our geopolitical position in order to position their troops or other things and to fight the Cold War. Now, things become more fluid now. It's like a new opening for adventurers, people that might want to adventure and get into other things. Like if dictators have more options now to work with. I don't want to go out of context, but I would have explained what is happening in Sudan. The game played in Sudan now, why the soldiers are still trying to hold on to power. Why? Because of the geopolitics of Sudan. You have Egypt. And if you understand the problem of the Nile, I mean, Egypt is an ally because of Ethiopia. If you understand the war in Ethiopia, it's not only about the ethnic these things. It have support from where, I mean, Egypt and other countries that want to see the Nile projects stop. From Ethiopia. These are things that we have to understand. But let's bring it back here into Africa, West Africa for that matter. Now, we have a lot of other players. It's not only, but there's something unique about the French. they are more aggressive. Because the French economy depends more, and we know that from after colonization, they depend more on what they get from us. The French economy, it's not very, productive. The productivity of French economy, as many of the economies, is based on the productivity of their companies that operate out of France. And the companies, even in France, now the projects they operate inside Africa. If you go and check the countries that French have influence in, the projects given to French companies and the corruption in those contracts, you'll be surprised. They are the worst. If you look at Ivory Coast, the projects, the railways, and everything that French companies are doing, it's to benefit the French economy. Senegal, the Senegalese railway, and every project, telecoms, or any project the French companies take is to benefit mainly the French companies. This is why they want to make sure they push the competitors, they push China, they push Russia, they push every other country and control that so-called country. And they don't care about our democracy. They want a resemblance of democracy. They don't go out there to empower democracy. They will never empower opposition or anything. They will only go for the opposition if the opposition is about to win an election. But they will always go for the incumbent and control everything. And they don't care. If the people don't care or the people don't stand up to achieve a democracy and you have a dictatorship, they don't care. They will support the dictator. Go and look at Chad. Go and look at Niger. What is happening there? That gives you an example. Obviously, Mobutu on all others, they don't care. Now, let's look at this. I'm picking up France for a reason, and we'll see some of these things because happening with us now. But the other players, US and Russia and all those players are the same thing. If we don't look after ourselves, nobody will look after us. If we look after ourselves, we can partnership, and we have an open option and do things right. You know what? It's the problem is our people electing leaders, our leaders who are corrupt, who doesn't care. They will not go for the best deal for the country. They go the best deal for them. They go to a government or do things for who they believe that they can support them, who can entrench them. And you know, that's why I wrote that post. If you want to control someone, make the person not believe in himself. If you want to abuse someone, undermine that person not to have a self-beliefs. Let them not believe themselves that they can do things. Then you have them. If you, another point, if you want to control someone, control the belly. Control the economy of that country. You control them. If you want to control someone, control the security of that person. That's what they do. That's what they do. And why can't we control our own security? We can. Why can't we control our own economy? We can't. Yes, I'm not saying to live as an island. But there are a lot of priority things that we can do in order to put in a position that we can bargain. We don't just take China. China can bid for something. Russia can bid for something. England can bid for something. The EU can bid for something. Turkey can bid for something, and we take the best out of what is been decided. But when you have corrupt leaders, they don't care. The multinational comes in, they know how to get them. And in this case, their countries, they use diplomacy, so-called diplomacy, to ensure they have what they want. But Africa will go back toward violence. Because if it takes violence to achieve it, they will ensure they build the storm for that violence to take on, and I'll prove this. Move on. I give an example here. You know, Senegal in the early 90s started to move away from France. Wade did a lot of things, and before Wade, Abdou Diouf, in fact. You remember even going to the Gulf War. Gulf War, Senegal subscribed troops to the Gulf War under the blessing of America. And from there on, there's a lot of the Senegalese outlook, opening up their economy and everything else, started to look into France, America and other countries. And that continued under Wade. And obviously, France were not happy with that. Then when Macky Sall happened to become a president, they went there and supported Macky, backed Macky, and now what happened is they regained influence. But it's not the only influence they regain in Macky. Remember, as I said, that's why Macky Sall is trying to go the same way Condé went, Ouattara. But Macky is more similar to Ouattara. The way Ouattara went about to try to find a third term and stay on. This is what he's trying to do because of influence of the French. Now, what France is doing with Macky Sall is, France have devised a plan here. Now, Macky Sall is used, and if Macky Sall is used, the Senegalese sovereignty is used. You see, that's why it's very sensitive, and we have to be knowledgeable and understand the dynamics. Senegalese citizens are not our enemy. Senegalese citizens are going through the same struggle we are going through. Senegalese citizens have shown through these local government elections they are not happy with their government. Senegalese citizens have been coming out, demonstrating, been killed. How many Senegalese have been killed before these elections? Within the year, how many Senegalese youths have been killed, arrested? How many Senegalese opposition have been marginalized? How many Senegalese opposition have been harassed? How many Senegalese journalists have been harassed? Everything have been done. But what Macky represents, and I'll tell you this: Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Equatorial Guinea, all these countries, one thing they have in common: France is using Macky Sall and corrupt business people, scrupulous business people, in order to advance the French interest. I'll come to this again. Come to the French interest. And the other point we have to look at is, before you think, oh, it's only English-speaking, French-speaking countries France is interested in. No. During the 1981 Confederation, France tried. France were given resources directly to Senegal, trying to influence the Confederation to their interest. France tried to ensure not only the gendarmerie was influenced, they wanted to take over Senegal, to take over to train the Gambian army. That's how it started. Gambian army was going to be under Senegalese thing. Jawara was wise up to pull back on that bit and bring the British to hold that. You see, because of the negotiations we had for the Confederation was under what? Duress. Gambia was insecure. You see, that's why I said, if you want to control someone, make them insecure. Through the economy or through what? Insecurity by their physical security. People are scared, not believe in their own themselves. What you do, you control the narratives. And 81, this is what was going to happen. But when Jawara regained confidence, said, no, let the army be trained by the Brits to insulate them from French poaching. But the Confederation, in fact, broke because of what? The aggressiveness of Senegal trying to get more from the relationship. You see, now these are facts. That's why I am not saying this to incite nationalistic, over nationalistic behaviors or anything. No. What I am saying is, Gambians to be conscious, so that when we are conscious, we elect conscious leaders, make sure we appoint capable people, so that our mutual interests, Gambia and Senegal, will be looked after, not the interests of France or Senegal alone. Our mutual interests will be looked after. And further down the line, we might have an integration. That depends on the people. If government people come to a point that, oh, they want this thing because of our harmonization of our economy and other things, fine. We are all benefiting. What's the point of having a boundary? Let's take the boundaries off. And we move for Guinea-Bissau. Let's take the boundary off, because mutually, we are all equally benefiting. I support that. But this is it. They're trying to have their influence. We have to understand this. We had, France continued. But what is France doing now? People that know will understand this. Most business people who are coming into, they got facilitated by their relationship. The business individual who are not in good relationship with Macky Sall don't have that advantage. But those people that sponsor Macky Sall, that want to support Macky Sall even third term, these are the people benefiting from the advancement Macky Sall is doing into these countries, using his diplomatic powers, soft diplomacy. Because of what? Because of he made these countries believe in especially Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. Now he's trying to use the same soft diplomacy to influence Sierra Leone, to influence Liberia. And remember, both Sierra Leone and Liberia, the minute they won their elections, where did they go to? Senegal. And I tell you, Senegalese intelligence did give money to these candidates when they were likely to win elections. They gave them money when they were likely to win. Mother Bio received money from Macky Sall. George Weah received money from Macky Sall. Because of what? That's why they see him as a friend. But do you know that most of it is because of France want to use and to get into these English-speaking countries? They already got into Gambia. They are going to get into Guinea-Bissau. They already into Guinea-Bissau and others. And you can see how they get things done. And look at it. How many African countries now are signatory to this Francophone community thing going on? Most these people are, Gambia are signatory to be observers or whatever you call them. And remember when Gambia signed up to join this Francophone community, made Gambia to lose $50 million, what that was meant to come from Azerbaijan. Because what happened is, the same time that French influenced our government to sign this, French influenced our government to recognize Armenia. Armenia recognition make us to lose $50 million that was going to come for the OIC projects. Because of Gambia went and recognized Armenia. And Turkey, in fact, we had a problem with Turkey as well. That relationship had to be meant. You see, we have to understand this. That's why when we elect leaders, when we talk about politics, it's not only what happens at on the table there. There are things that happen outside of the table. Something happened in the sub-region. We have to understand this, understand the other people, their interests. Yeah, the British have interests, the Americans have interests, but their interests are not to up to the French. And you know the French are undermining the West African echo. So that the West African currency, they will undermine anything that would give us our total independence. They hate it. They will do anything to control what happens in our countries. And if they cannot do that democratically, they will side and go with the army. One way or the other. America does it. The English do it hardly. But mainly America and France. And let's move on. We will give you examples on this. You know, now we can see what's been happening within this 16 months. We had Mali, we had Guinea-Conakry, and we have Burkina Faso. Okay. Now, if we look at things that are happening, apart from the domestic, like the bad governance this happened with the leaders of that country. Okay, let's start with Mali. When we look at Mali, we'll see the hands of the imperialists as the Russians and the French. And the Russians are having the upper hand now. Now, Mali, they went through elections. And they went elections when it was in fact not stable. But what happened again? You remember I talked about instability. You know, I talked about what even made the Arab Spring for the Americans and the Western countries to pull their lever, put the lever of the Arab Spring, was when they went into Libya. Obviously, they overthrew Gaddafi. But what happened in short is, you know, the grip that Gaddafi had on Libya and the mechanism that Gaddafi had in Libya was based on tribal. He got this tribal and regional alliances, counterbalance, counterforce against each other in Tripoli, in different regions. He got West African nationals, Gambians, Tuaregs from Mali and other these things, and arm them and give them privileges, give them their own enclaves in Libya, and sponsor them to be another mechanism for his survival and his regime. And Gaddafi was overarmed. Even before the uprising, he was overarmed. Over the years, he has been importing weapons from different countries, not only to use, but to export to other revolutions and other things. Now, when the Libyan government, Gaddafi government fell, the Tuaregs did not have a sanctuary anymore. They have weapons, they have money. What do? They go out to Tuaregs. Some of them are from Mali, some of them are from Niger, some of them are from other areas. But again, remember, the Islamists came out from that. And because Islamists were suppressed in Libya and other areas, and now they saw an opportunity. And Islamists came and their arms are available, everything is available. It's an adventure. Now, what happened is the Islamists started to spread, the Tuaregs started to spread, get into Mali and other Sahelian countries. Then, you know, Niger and others, the Islamists connect with Boko Haram. Remember, if you look at the timeline, Boko Haram did not acquire expertise, arms and other things at the time of Gaddafi's thing. But when Gaddafi fell and everything, and things, proliferation of arms and small arms and everything, expertise and missions going on, the Boko Haram opened up and they started to gain ground. You see, again, that's why I said what happens in other countries, what it had on you. I've written something on this. I've shared it before with stakeholders, and some action was taken on some of those things, and some things were controlled. But Gambia, we are not completely insulated. We are kind of insulated in many factors, but we are not completely insulated. The jihadis and all these things can happen in our country. But we are insulated by the buffer provided by Senegal. We are insulated by the other factors present in us because of the Sufi. Most of us are Sufi. Some of the same thing that insulate Senegal is insulating us factors. But it's not entirely the same. Senegal is not completely insulated. And if it reaches to Senegal, it's going to reach us. We have to remember that. That's why we have to be very careful of the insurgency in Casamance. We should not look at it any other way. A trouble, conflict outside our borders is not to the interest of Gambia. Senegal is a democracy, and I'll get into that. Now the elections they have just shown with every disadvantage going on, the opposition is vibrant, and they can channel that. The example is that insurgencies might start for one reason and end up to be something else, because other people will come in and because of the environment and take up that storm and create their own. Just as Boko Haram took over from the spill over from Libya into Mali and others and made their own, continue with their own, give them exoneration powers and so on to move on. This thing happened in Niger, happened in Chad and others. That's why you see those countries, this thing. But Burkina Faso, Mali. Now, look at it. When it gets to Mali, you know the Tuaregs. Remember the Tuaregs have rise up before. And this was, I forgot the dates, some while ago, the Tuaregs did rise up and the Malian government took control of that. This was when Gaddafi was in power. And actually Gaddafi helped at that time to the Malian government manage, and that was around 2000 something. No, actually when I was in Liberia, we had around 1991. The Tuareg revolt started in 1991, and they managed it through the support of Libya. The Malian government managed it. Then it came back again, and they took over the northern part. That was Azawad. They had the Republic of Azawad, or whatever you call them. But again, the French came and support and moved them. But this time around, because of Libya and the conflict in Libya, supply of arms continued and everything else, it's kind of giving them problems. But one thing, it happened again. The herdsmen, what we call the Fulanis of Mali, and the other tribes, the Dobong people and other cultivators in Mali used to have a problem because the cattle and cultivation, they had a problem. But this time round, because of the availability of arms and the Tuareg presence and everything else, and the Tuaregs and the Islamists, Tuaregs and Islamists use this tension between the Fulanis and the cattle herders and the cultivators, land cultivators, and pumped weapons and everything. Another front was open. Now not only the Tuaregs attacking the government, but there's inner communal fighting. Another insurgency was opened up. Mali becomes so destabilized. Now we remember, people don't realize, but already Russia were already in town. That's why I said, when General was dealing with Russia, Putin came in time and to revive the Cold War. Some of the soldiers started to go training in Russia and kind of a relation with Russia, balancing it. The French were there. Obviously, the French were in support of the Malian government, a corrupt government. The government was corrupt. The elections were questionably won by Keita, and so on. And civil society was not happy. The opposition weren't happy. This brought about what? A tensions and civil unrest to the tip. Then through that civil unrest, the group of soldiers, most of them trained were in Russia, decided to take over a strategic camp with heavy weapons and force their way with the support of civil society, the people out, the civil society and the political class, and they took over. Now the civil society and political class thought they were taking over because, to address the situation. No. Now they are realizing that no, the soldiers are doing things, they're taking power and they're taking power for themselves. They're not taking power for the people. They are not out there to support the people. Now they in fact marginalizing civil society and polarizing civil society with politicians. Now in order for them to entrench themselves. And that's why they're asking for more time to install themselves, entrench themselves so that they go into politics. By that time, they have consolidated power and they can run as candidates. That's why it's dangerous to let things happen to the extent of the army getting involved. That's why I'm not in support of army interventions. Now, what is happening is the soldiers in Mali are using anti-French sentiments, which is very easy to use now in Africa and anywhere else, and popularism, and giving them popularism. But the people, Malians, should be very careful what they're fighting for, or who they're fighting for, or what these things they should understand. Yeah, the French are not good news, but the Russians are not either. They're providing what the French cannot do with their soldiers and the Brits and EU soldiers in there. A mercenary company from Russia cannot do that. Go and look at what happened in 𝐒𝐔𝐋𝐀𝐘𝐌𝐀𝐍, Central African Republic. Go and see the human rights abuses. What they do to maintain the semblance of stability, to extract mineral resources as much as possible. They are not better than the French. Probably, even you can say the French might be better. Depends how the government manage themselves. Now, these soldiers are under pressure. Let's see what's going to happen. Don't be surprised to see the soldiers turn around to accept the French in order to maintain themselves, and the French might accept them in order to regain control. I'll get to the reason why when I get to Burkina Faso. I'll get to the reason why. Now, what is happening in Mali? Things are going to get worse. Mali got sanctions by ECOWAS. You see, the same ECOWAS that will never intervene, that never have mechanisms to ensure crisis did not happen. They only intervene when crisis already happens. Now they're taking this measure, and this is the only measure they can take, or they available to them in order to push. They're trying to force the soldiers to come to the negotiating table, because what the soldiers did was not reasonable. The soldiers just went for 5-year plan. If the soldiers came down to 2-year plan, ECOWAS could have sat down with them and negotiate that plan. And confidence building can ensure and transition can happen. But the soldiers knew that 2 years with the concentrating to fight the war and so on, it's not likely for them to consolidate. Because anything that happened in the battlefield now is going onto them. And I cannot see them winning the battlefield, as I said. Now, I think it's a mistake what they did and how they want to go by it, but history will prove us right. Now, the soldiers are going to have problems fighting the insurgents. They should have concentrate, give back power to the people, civil society and politicians to come in a national conference within a short period, build a transitional government, and voila, soldiers go back to prison and concentrate in fighting the insurgents. But that's not happening, and this is going to happen. Let's move on to Guinea-Conakry. Guinea-Conakry, we all know what happened. Now, the Tata, again, the Condé violated the constitution, went for constitutional amendment, the same amendment, type of amendment Macky Sall did. And in the course of this amendment, and everything, people came out to protest. Many Guineans were killed from the opposition. It went to the threshold. The next threshold was the referendum. Everything was just to prepare the Condé to run for elections. The referendum came, many people were killed. West Africa, ECOWAS didn't say anything. Now they went to elections. The opposition claimed fraud and many people were killed. But the French were in support of the opposition here. Because of the Russians, again, you see the game, the Russians have the contracts, very lucrative contracts, and control of what the Guinean government with other entities. Now they want to control. And this is and very interesting thing to check. What happens in Mali? Young officers. And now this is the another thing in Africa. Most senior officers in Africa are called part of the educated class. They can measure up intellectually with the people in the civil society. They can measure equally to people in the political class and the civil servants. They go to institutions to have their masters, their doctorate. They can articulate themselves. They write. They are politically aware, and they can easily be radicalized, and they can easily take control. Now they can easily manipulate the situation more. They can easily sell themselves. I mean, to bring civil society on board, bring some political anti-establishment on board in order to what from governments. And this is very, I know people say it's good, we can do it, but it's very dangerous. This is encouraging more coup d'etats. But again, as I say, coup d'etats only happen where bad governance happen. If people are aware and their interest, they would not allow, they would protect it jealously. But now, in Guinea, technically that's not what has happened. What has happened is the French managed to get to one of theirs who was trained by the French as a mercenary. They call them the elite forces, foreign legion. They are mercenaries. They send them to fight for them in other countries. And Condé got this guy and got him on tribal lands as a mechanism to defend him, and gave him responsibility, gave him equipment, gave him a special force capacity to serve as a counterbalance to other troops. And for that. Now, it's easy now. If you really want to overthrow, who do you get on your side? Get him. He is the most effective person. He is de facto given powers that nobody to check him, but he can check anybody else. What Guinea did not organize was a balance of power, so that this guy can be checked. When things started to look like the guy is posing a threat, what they did was just a measure, was to move him out of the capital, but not far away. The guy can still drive and come, because they still need him as their counterbalance. But they don't have a counterbalance against him. It was easy for him. And I said, what they do now is go for the president. They didn't wait for the president to travel. They went for the president, and without that much resistance, they took over. They hold the president in captive and force him to resign. Now, the French are now in control of the government for now. Now they are going to try to get this, renegotiate contracts and other things, but something is happening. The gentleman is not letting off straight away. Probably he's serving. He kind of still have the Russians on board. What is he doing? I mean, is he striking a balance, or is he calculating how to dispose of the Russians and so on? We don't know. But things are still fluid. But we know that he have not consolidated, and the danger is he have manipulated situation at the beginning, because he came with the popularism. As I said, coup d'etat have to be popular. Popularism. The opposition celebrated him. That no, an open-ended transition, no time limit to his transition. And he have made, and foolishly, opposition believing things said by military leaders or politicians. Not what they say is what they do. Oh, I am not going to stand elections. None of us going to stand elections. None of my listening. That's a lie. The guy he cannot be trusted on that. We all know how it goes. How many people have said that? How many politicians have said that? How many soldiers have said that? They turn around to say that all the people demand them to say. And it's likely to happen in Guinea-Conakry. He is consolidating power. Probably after consolidation completely, then he will go after the Russians and go after this and serve the French interests. But one thing we should look up to, the French might use him to influence. That's why I said, let's see how the Malian government is going to move on. The French might use him to persuade the Malian authorities to change their stand and get the French back on. The French would do anything to control Mali. It's a strategic, I know it's a landlocked country, but for reasons, they wouldn't want to lose Mali for final reason. They want to try their influence to go on there. Now, this is situation. Let's move on to Burkina Faso. A week ago, our I was in a forum, and the other one I was talking to a friend of mine interested, and I said to him, Burkina Faso is next, very soon. Guinea-Bissau is next. Ivory Coast would be, and I leave it there. I'm not going to say the other things I've looked at, but for origin, I've looked at these things based on the factors present and the interests, other factors, not only domestic but external factors. Now, the same situation that Mali had is happened in Burkina Faso. Remember, Burkina Faso get rid of Blaise Compaoré, and the army that Blaise had, the special forces, the presidential guard trying to hold back and this thing, and the people power came up and forced him out, and forced the soldiers to this thing, and the interim government was ensured, and they dissolved this special forces and this thing, retired some of them and moved some of them into other forces. They retired the most senior ones, and because there are still young ones that stayed, and they were this, and obviously most of them sent for further training to capacitate them, for the challenges they have. Because of where they have the insurgency coming from what? The spillover from Libya again, and threatening their territorial integrity. That's why I said again, let us not underestimate what is happening in Casamance. We should not allow it. What it does, it might bring distractions, and something else might be hijacked and something else. It's not a big thing now. They are not big, but we should be very careful, because there are other factors that might be part of it. This is what normally happens. You don't create that environment where insurgency might thrive. Then what happened here is, in the case of Burkina Faso, again, the politicians, not effective, corruption, not delivering, but again, they have a challenge with this insurgency. And we have to understand, yeah, the French are doing what they're doing, but the Russians are spending a lot of money for the anti-French feeling in Africa, and the Chinese are too. You will see a lot of stories coming out. You know, that's what intelligence do. They are making Africans to detest the French. They have a reason to detest the French, but should not be the Russians and Chinese telling them to take up what? The Chinese and Russians? No. They are still imperialists. That's why, again, educating the people to be conscious is important. What you do is end up killing each other, fighting each other to destabilize yourselves, and the government that comes out of it would not be better off than the government you take out. And who do they serve? The imperialist power. Especially when it is cross-border. The entire sub-region get, just as what happened in Libya, Liberia and other countries. Resource. What we will see is tribal. What we see is this. Yes, these are the other factors we already have. That's why we need to control these factors. Religious beliefs, tribal and so on. We have to be very careful. And it's easy now, social media. You go to WhatsApp groups, you see WhatsApp groups showing you a bulletin of gold coming out of mines, saying that in the French are taking gold from Mali. Gold that comes from the soil does not come from deep cast mines like that. No. And those bulletins are refined gold. Then if you know something, but most people don't know. You see educated Africans sharing it. You see what the French are doing in Mali. Yes, I know the French are exporting Mali, but that's not it. You see French soldiers in helicopters picking up gold, bulletin. Those bulletins of gold probably have not been refined even in Africa. Probably now we have few African countries might have refineries, but normally it's Dubai, India, and other places they refine them. Antwerp, they're going to refine them to break them in bulletin to sell them. But these propagandas are going. The Russians are putting this in information, social media, WhatsApp, and everything else. They're creating a storm. The Islamists are out there wreaking havoc. What happened? Governments will not be functional. What do they want? To control that government. And this government, now because of they're not effective, they go into using tribal lines in order to secure themselves, thinking that they have to use their tribe to secure themselves. And what happened is tension. Now, just as in Guinea, they use tribal line to build an elite force and everything. That force they used to take you out. Now, in Burkina Faso, the same thing happened. And you know, the soldiers that were part of Blaise Compaoré, securing Blaise Compaoré, built by Blaise Compaoré over the years, most of them from Blaise Compaoré tribe and others, were dismantled. They went into different forces. And there was a time, a few years ago, they attempted a coup d'etat. Some of them were arrested, some were not. And they were locked up. And mistake of this government, again, they locked these people. Probably the only fitted place was a barracks. And that barracks, again, was controlled by what they term as government loyalists. You see, we have to be careful with these loyalists. Loyalists based on what? Who are they loyal to? They cannot be loyal to an individual. They cannot be loyal to a tribe. They have to be Republican forces. They lock them there. The person that led this coup and the people who led this coup with are from the same people that were with Blaise Compaoré. And we all know Blaise Compaoré was backed by the French and still backed by the French and his master in Ouattara. You think this guy is independent? You think this guy overthrew just for Burkina Faso? No, he overthrew because of French. And something people that listen to communicate, Macron, because he's immature, let the cat out. Macron is the first president to acknowledge that, yeah, the coup is successful. And it's a coup d'etat, in fact. Because he's immature. He does that all the time. Mitterrand and others would not have done that because of they are very mature. They would play their hands without being seen. But Macron will always show his hands. This thing happened. The guy was responsible for special forces. He's educated. He's got a master's degree. He wrote a book on counterintelligence, counterintelligence, anti-terrorism measures. He was given responsibility to take care of the capital. What did he do? Just as what the guy did in Guinea-Conakry. Went for the president, ambushed him, arrest him, and pretended, just as in Guinea-Conakry, it's just a mutiny. What does it give you? It gives you a cover. And that cover, within that cover, you place your things move on. And he came out and announced. We see the role played by external aggressors and others, and the failure of good governance and so on. And this is, why do I say next would be Ivory Coast? What is happening here is, the French did this in Burkina. Remember a few weeks ago, the French were kicked out. The people, because of the sentiments brewed by the Russians and the Chinese media campaign. They threw them out. Now the French want to reassert. They have seen that this government is going to fall. They rather control the falling of this government by installing a strong man. And they will support the strong man to take control of the country, and they will continue their interests. This is what is happening. Now the same scenario, why did I say Ivory Coast? Ivory Coast, they're struggling in the succession plan. Ouattara is still ill. Ouattara can fall dead any day because he's still ill. He's struggling. They tried some succession plan, did not work. Ouattara have to go for the third term. A prime minister was killed. Yes, he didn't die, he was killed. Another prime minister was poisoned, he will have to be taken out because of the succession fighting. Now, they're trying to neutralize the opposition, bringing Ouattara and his adversary together, but that's not a solution. It's not the final solution. The French are doing that because of what they do. In intelligence, what we say, we have a third way. They prepare situation in a way that they have a win-win-win situation. If A did not work and B, C would work. And they are all be good as the other. But you give priority based on the first, how is it to facilitate A, then that would determine A. How is it facilitate to do this one, then that will become B. How is it facilitate, that will become C. And in this case, they are, kind of controlling the atmosphere now. They don't want the storm to continue to brew. Because of the opposition will continue to brew up the storm, remember the elections, disputes and everything, then what would happen is they might not be in control of situation. They know that the government is weak, Ouattara is weak. What they do now is to prop up Ouattara by bringing Gbagbo and making the so-called reconciliation and other things with Gbagbo after they kill each other's tribe that much. No, it's a lie. It's not a reconciliation. Ouattara people would never trust Gbagbo to be in power. But the French will do that if that's the only alternative. That's why I say that's option C. Option A is still to try to get a successor, if it works. If that fails, it's the army. If that fails, it's the army. They will rearrange things. And remember, some of these strategic decisions are taken by information given by what? The imperialists. Probably even to organize Ouagadougou, in the setup they organized Ouagadougou to appoint this gentleman as appoint this man as the custodian of the security for Ouagadougou, probably was influenced by the French. That's what intelligence do. French might not even come and point him out, but there's a way you play things and things can be selected the way you want, or things can be arranged the way you want, because information, where do you put the information matters. Because if you know that Ben Suare can influence the president, you get Ben Suare to do it. You don't go to the president. Get Ben Suare to do it. Ben Suare is the most trusted. Most trusted, get Ben Suare to do it. Probably the wife of the president is more influential. Who is more influential to the wife of the president is get him to do it. Make sure the president believes that Ben Suare is the best person for his security. Because of the French know that they can work with Ben Suare, because there is a relation between them and Ben Suare. But the French will not come and tell the president get Ben Suare. But the president will trust the wife. In the dead of night, you know the wives know how to get things done by their husband to do things. They will get them to do things. That's why we have to understand our security rests with us if you do it right, but because we have to deal with all these challenges outside. Things are not things we are not responsible of happening outside our borders are our responsibility, because it's going to affect us. These aggressors, these imperialists will come in to use anything possible in order to control. Now it's for our interest to do that. That's why I said Ivory Coast will be next. Why Guinea-Bissau? Next. Guinea-Bissau, if you look at it, they don't have a history of democratization. Whatever you talk about Gambia, we had the 30 years of Jawara. Help us with something. That's why it's easy. And Senegal, if you look at even our elections, help us with organizing elections and all the things. And even when the dictatorship came in, it was a dictatorship. It was still in elections, but we still have an organization structure going on. The resemblance of democracy or multi-party system going on. We had that. It's easy to move on and consolidate and do things better. In Bissau, it was chaos. It's been chaos for a while. And remember, when you fight liberation struggle, you fight based on strength. And most of the strength will depend on your ethnicity. Most of the strength will depend on your regionalized regions. And most regions in most of these African countries are based on ethnicity. And when they fight separately like that, and they defeat the imperialists, what happened is to form government. You know what happened with Bissau to forming a government, the struggle with different political parties, and that's why they're not stable. And you know that every other coup or happen, you have to see the tribal factor in it. But what we don't point out is the imperialist influence. Portugal still and other countries, because again, they are resource rich in Bissau. They have strategic position where they are at the Atlantic, and other things, advantages they have. And they are a sovereign country, which is needed. That's why you look at Guinea-Bissau, it's very difficult country to stabilize. It needs someone with courage to do the right thing and continue. Consolidate. They need to do a transition to form institutions and a lot of things. If you look at Guinea-Bissau, the infrastructures are very struggling. Everything else is struggling. It should take a continuity of a two-term president who is very vibrant and to do things happen. But what do they have? They have Mbalo. And Mbalo is influenced by Macky Sall. Yes, and Macky Sall is influenced by the French. You see, there are competing forces around him already. The Russians are very close by. They're trying to get in. The Chinese are very close by. They try to get in to have control. We have to be very careful of this thing. But Mbalo have already committed mistakes that make him vulnerable. He is involved in the narco trade. He is involved in arms smuggling, and he is involved in corruption. And because of the influence that Macky Sall have of him, now the French people are, the Russians, and people are agitating the French influence on him. Why? And you saw, as I said, the French influence, the way it played in other countries, Burkina Faso and others. Because of, again, the influence on Macky Sall, the evidence came out that he went and signed a bilateral relationship, an agreement, without the knowledge of Parliament, without the knowledge of Cabinet. And that was something very important. That's for resource sharing. You know the boundaries of Guinea-Bissau, just as the boundaries of Gambia and Senegal, as the boundaries of Senegal and Mauritania. You see, the oil and other mineral wealth are within these boundaries. Just as you have Nigeria, Cameroon, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea. You see, they are bound to have conflict in this. And that's a way you settle this. Just as Senegal settled with Mauritania is by signing an agreement, mutual, that they both would benefit according to what the evidence they have on the resources presence and how it affects and the investment needed and how they're going to share it. That's how you do it. Above board, transparent. But in this case, Mbalo accepted the influence of Macky Sall and went and signed this agreement without the knowledge of this thing. And he, when it was pointed out, he denied signing anything until the documents were leaked. Now, Parliament is angry about that, and civil society is angry. Now they're demonstrating, they're calling for his head. You see, now the storm is brewing for what? A coup d'etat and other things. This is, I said, that's why I said it starts from domestic, but then the international and these vampires will come in and do the rest. But we always create it ourselves. Just as the mistakes Jawara did to create what we have, and other people did to create that. This is what is happening in Bissau. Now, the drug trade, the Prime Minister have found and discovered drug trafficking from the Gambia with an airplane registered in the Gambia, bought by a Gambian, still we don't know which Gambian it is, flew from Gambia to Guinea-Bissau in the dead of night, and that night offloaded a ton of cocaine. A ton of cocaine. Used to be things coming from Guinea-Bissau to others. No, it's coming out from Gambia to Guinea-Bissau. Tons of cocaine. And that night, where the plane left Gambia, the minute it approached Bissau airspace, who called for clearance? The President's office called for the aviation authorities to give clearance to an unknown aircraft coming from the Gambia, unknown to them. Because the aircraft still is not registered properly. The aircraft still is carrying a flag of the company that owned them before. That's the Kuwaiti Airlines. And dead of night, they came and landed in Guinea-Bissau. And that night, they offloaded the trucks. The next morning, the Prime Minister knew about it. The Prime Minister sent the anti-narcotic to arrest the plane. When they get there, what happened? The crew from Turkey left. Remember I told you about Turkey. Turkey is in the sense. And most of the drug trafficking now happening in West Africa is with the Colombians and the Turkish. And the Turkish, it's not only private Turkish, they are part of the Turkish intelligence. They are selling drugs to sponsor their economy. Yes, Turkish are selling drugs to sponsor their economy. The 2-ton cocaine that came to the Gambia, the crew was, the engineer was a Turkish. He ran before the voyage went out there. And guess what? Even the Gambians involved in the deal, they have their business partners as Turkish. They're in Turkey. The other business partners were Turkish. It's run by Turkish intelligence, just like the Iranians and Hezbollah, how they do things. It's the same thing. Now, this plane was impounded. Now, the Prime Minister asked for organization that do this NACO to come and test the aircraft to find. When those people came, what happened? The president sent his presidential guards to arrest these people. That night, people were killed in Bissau relating to this drug. That's the narco trade. A country already, anything can happen to the president now. He's fighting with the prime minister. And we know the last time that happened, Ninivera was killed, overthrown. Now, because of these people are American on orders, he had to let them go. These people did the test and they said they're going to check this thing. But probably they already have cleansed the plane the time they were arrested. And the plane is still impounded by the prime minister. The prime minister wants investigation done. You see, that's why I said Bissau is next after Ivory Coast, or Ivory Coast and Bissau can go at the same time. Now, something is happening. Gambia recently, we arrested, the army arrested arms with PIU and were 2 white people. We still didn't know the background of that. Recently, in Senegal, they arrested tons of ammunition at the port of Dakar. A few days after that, tons of arms and ammunition were arrested at what? Guinea-Conakry. Now, where are these arms and ammunition coming from? To West Africa. Now, this is why I said our governments, this is what they should be thinking about. That's why I said the Cold War is going and going. The imperialists are still doing what they do. These are evidence. It's out there. Go and cite it. I can tell you the dates and everything. Go and cite the arms seized in Senegal. We all know the ones seized in Gambia. Even the Guinea-Conakry one, most people don't know about that. Do we ask ourselves, where is this thing going to? That's why I said we should be very careful. Now, let's come back to the Senegal. Now, you see, what happened in Senegal, Macky Sall have tried everything. You see, that's why I said civil society and democracy, when they work, we avoid conflict. But in the process of building democracy, conflict do happen. Life do get lost. It should not, but it do get lost. Recently, Macky Sall, after manipulating the constitution, in order to give him possibilities for a 3rd term, so that he can do the same, because remember, Abdoulaye Wade did the same thing, manipulate the constitution, and now to say that, oh no, this means that the constitution is reset. Now the counting have to start from this term, not last term. Now this is the same Macky Sall want to do. What Macky Sall want to do, is just as Wade did, is to take the case to the Constitutional Court. And constitutional courts are an establishment factor. Judges in constitutional courts rarely rule against the government. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that. Even in UK, I'll tell you, courts, Supreme Court will rarely rule against government. Because there's a thing about national interest. They look into other things, not only the law. They use their discussion. Now, in this case, Senegal, he have created all that. Not only that, he started to dismantle his own coalition, the people that supported him. His cabinet, when he won the 2nd term elections, what he did, he removed the position of prime minister. He took out all the people that he perceived are going to resist for him to go for 3rd term. Brought in new ones, young ones, who are ambitious. sycophants who will do anything he wants. The corruption ensured, the multi-billion corruption on oil and everything else, his family, his wife's family. Remember I said, once they become corrupt, the family of the president become an institution. That's him and his brothers and sisters and others. The wife, first lady, become an arm of government as a first lady. Then the family of the first lady become an institution, the brothers and others. This is what is happening in Senegal. Now, the French companies came through the so-called development, to build railways that are 100 times expensive than what is required. Where's the money coming from? Jobs are created in France. Companies in France that were to close will not close. Job will be created. Because of everything will be manufactured in France, the expertise and everything, the signals and everything. And I said, once the Senegal is operating those trains, the spare parts and everything is going to come from France. Jobs will continue to be created in France. There are better ways to build a railway without depending on France or any government for everything else. Tanzania did that with Turkey. Tanzania is doing that with Turkey right now. That Tanzanian military and other engineers and others are taking control of most of its infrastructure after finish. Now, not only that. Now, after that, he went on to fight anything that would stop him for a third time. He went for Y'en a marre. Remember Y'en a marre, the civil society movement that even, let's say, the catalyst for Macky Sall to win elections. He went for Y'en a marre. Some of them want to accuse them of rape, of criminality, of receiving money from foreign governments or countries, everything, to break them down. 1. 2, he went, after he dismantled his own party structures, he went for the opposition. He got Mustafa Nyas, he got the guy from Chess, help me out there again. He got them into government. He paid them off into government. Idrissa Seck, he got Idrissa Seck and other, paid them off into government. Now one person was left, Sonko. Yes, Sonko discretion, mistake of visiting a Maasai Palo, and look, I'm not questioning that. Obviously, that was wrong. That was a mistake for what he called for, and he was. But did he rape someone? No. For a married man doing that as a political figure, it was a misjudgment. But they tried to use that to damage him, to lock him up. But before Sonko, he locked up other oppositions. Halifa Sallah and others. He locked them up. But now Sonko was left. He marginalized everything. What would have happened if the people did not resist? I know, people should not die. You think if Sonko just walked in and go to the courts, you think the courts were going to be fair with Sonko? They were going to lock him up. And if Sonko was locked up, it would have affected his party. And it would not have happened. This election would not have happened the way it did. They tried smear campaign. They tried everything to lock up Sonko. They called Sonko to be violent. Who was violent? Because, no, they tried to, even they went to the tribal cards. Yes, they went there. The government ministers, I'm not sure they did, but they used their representative to go television station talking about tribe, insinuating. That's why we should be very careful with this MFDC. Insinuating Sonko with Casamas and other things. I'm not going to go in there. They tried everything to break this guy. What happened though? They continue. Sonko and the youths and civil society and the conscious Senegalese, what we call the Senegalese intelligence, they stood against what Macky was doing. They knew that this is not about Sonko. This is not about Sonko committing crime. This is about the opposition. This is about Senegalese democracy. This guy wants to break everything. With all the scandal, the corruption and everything, the COVID money, corruption everywhere. Why should we let this happen? That's what citizens should do. People should not die, but people died for that. Then elections ensued. They try to manipulate, they try to ban people candidature. They went for Majas, the mayor of Dakar. They try to take that person to prison. For what? Something that might happen, might not happen, or how it happened. They tried that to bring that up. The people stood just as they stood with Sonko. Sonko came and stood with him. He was not taken to prison. If he was taken to prison, what would happen? The spirit of the people would have been broken. Then the election happened. They used bribery. They used everything. Did everything. They even manipulated the votes. They used fraud in the elections. Go onto my timeline. I've shared the video. They manipulated the systems. They failed to empower the electorate. They tried everything. They moved voters from different regions to win elections. It all failed because the people were conscious. But what the opposition did again, come together. Macky Sall said he have a coalition. The opposition have a coalition. Tactical alliance. They came together. And why did they come together? It's not only about the local government. It's a referendum on Macky Sall data. They went tactically to go and contest this strategic places that would ensure that when they control the local government, Macky Sall would dare not talk about that. Because they're going to come out. They are not going to the courts. They're going to come in the streets and demand Macky Sall to get down. It's part of democracy. The French will not control them. Now, this thing happened, and I'll bring to us something. Then they have their candidates, and most of the candidates are youths. Most of the candidates, majority are youths across the board. They have this establishment people, ministers, former ministers, business people, people with money to be their candidates. These people went for the local people who have given to their people to stand, and they won. Dakar, Kaula, I mean, let's go on. Ziguinchor, and all these places. It's very important. Now, what we say that they are building up from the local government, and if this is replicated and is likely to be replicated, they don't only educate their people, they stood with their people, and they hold the system accountable to ensure to minimize the corruption in the elections, to advocate. They advocated, educated the people. You see, when Macky Sall unveiled the trains and celebrating it, they came and articulated what that represents. They did not come, oh yeah, he built a train. No, they said, look, we could have a train station, a train network, but not this much money. It should not cost this much money. This is what it should cost. Where is all this money gone? Corruption to you people, and the rest is at France because of jobs. You accept a contract that is creating mainly jobs for French. What is Senegal is doing? To be the drivers and the conductors and small engineers. Anything else, expertise is French. Spare parts and everything will manufacture in France and everything else. They did that. Another thing, even the bridge in the Gambia, they articulated the cost and everything. No Gambian opposition have ever done that. Even the bridge in Gambia, they explained anything that Macky Sall want to take as an achievement. They explained to Gambians, Senegalese, look, the achievement here is it's costing us so much, we could have done it better. And they took the money. And France is enjoying, or this company is enjoying. They did that. They educate their people. And what happened? It translated, and this might come out on Parliament. Now, something important here. I am not saying that Sonko is going to be president. No, I'm not saying that. A day is a long time in politics. A month is a long time in politics. And politics can be very fluid. What likely to happen? Change will come. And Sonko is likely to be a president. But there are other factors that will come into it. When election comes, the candidates will be determined. Would Sonko be a candidate? Even we don't know. Because if this coalition continue, and they go to parliament, tactical alliance it continued, and they took more parliament seats from the opposition, from the president, from the incumbent, then the coalition might decide to find a mechanism to choose a flag bearer, and Sonko might not be the flag bearer, and if Sonko is not the flag bearer, Sonko would have to accept whoever leads the coalition. But Sonko have an opportunity. Sonko have an opportunity because of you see again, our politicians, presidential candidate, no, you have to give it up. You have to be there, go to parliament or go to local government as a mayor. We should not have it easy. Look at Ziguinchor. Sonko went to Ziguinchor to be a mayor. Now he will have a template to show his capabilities, to prove himself. If he does the mayoral position well, it will be very difficult not to select him as the leader of the coalition. Because if you have a better political capital, the people would vote. I mean, mechanism they put him, he might be. But he is taking that risk to go there and prove himself. Not just to say that I am a presidential candidate. I have something, I have served three years here. This is what I've done. I've changed this, I've reformed this. In many cases, in many countries, in France, in the UK, in South America, people that become mayors likely to become presidents. They go for the presidency. And they are mostly, they use the capital they built, to become president. It's possible. But again, other things might happen in the political arena at that time to allow someone else to come. But one thing will happen. Senegal have solved their problem of this third term in a way and manner, in a democratic way and manner, for them to continue with a new government and the country to continue to develop and thrive and build their democracy. Senegal is not likely to have a coup d'etat. Not likely. You know, as when we assess assessors, when we assess do assessment for things, we said not likely, likely, highly likely, and so on. But Senegal will be not likely. Like if you were to score it to 10, you might say 2. You cannot say something will never happen, but I can say in this case you can say a 2. Why? They have a vibrant civil society. They have independent institutions. They have very vibrant political organization. They have an intellectual class that is very conscious, that will not stand by and see nonsense be done in a certain level. This is important. This is what we need to build. That's why this program, I have it today, and Gambia to look at this. And I will bring it back to something, and something very relevant, is the incident in Fonyi. It's a disgrace that our government have been reduced to the level of what we are today. That we have not even heard after a major insurgency situation operating in our country, where we have reports, conflicting reports coming out, now becoming very clear that 9 soldiers from the Senegalese contingent, again, I will emphasize this. And if you go and read my Fati's post or article or interview, whatever it is, my Fati have caveated that very nicely. Because he was there, he knew. He said economic or something forces present in the country based on bilateral. What those forces are the Senegalese in Fonyi. That's my understanding, and that was what the economic spokesperson said when the incident happened in Fonyi in 2017. That those soldiers were not under economic, they were not under economic command or mandate, they are under bilateral, and this thing have been said somewhere else before. Now, 9 soldiers with their weapons and everything, and they've been disarmed and taken hostage. And 2 soldiers been killed, and the rebels only lost 1. And probably 2 been arrested. Whether those 2 are the rebels, we don't even know. Because there's a Gambian officer missing, a CID officer missing. Probably he's one of the people arrested by the 𝐒𝐔𝐋𝐀𝐘𝐌𝐀𝐍. What does that tell you? Failure by 𝐒𝐔𝐋𝐀𝐘𝐌𝐀𝐍. Did they use a reconnaissance patrol to fight on? Because a reconnaissance patrol should not fight. What they do should do to withdraw and call for enforcement. There must be a tactical error for a rebel unit to take that much casualty from a regular force. Well equipped, should be in superior in tactics and capacity. That's a problem. But the major problem here is our Gambia government. We have, I don't know, is it a battalion in Foni? Gambians? Gambian soldiers are in Foni, in Kanilai area. Is it a company? Even a company. They are restrained. I am not blaming them for restraining it, because they don't even have a mandate in their own country. This is not having a mandate. Because I'll tell you that every unit commander would have to do an appraisal of the battle. And unit commander might do an appraisal and say, wait, what are we going to fight? How are we going to fight? By fighting, in fact, might even make it worse. Let's pass back and see how to get this out. Because protocols, you cannot have Gambia. How many battalions we have, I don't know. It depends how we structure it. I don't like to look into physical things like that. I don't like to be tempted. But I know we have about three. About three, let's say. Gambia, we have seen the training received by these people. Recently, 2 contingents came from Turkey, or been to Turkey, to do counter as a counter-reaction force. We see them in Sudan. We see them other places. And I know there's a history of able to maneuver and fight and do things. And I know they have courage. They've been to Liberia. They've been to places. Whether the leadership have courage, I don't know. The political leadership doesn't have courage. And everything is just complicated. We should not be. This is very serious. As I looked at other countries, and I have given examples of how these things happen, and how it can overflow to something else, we should not allow it. We should jealously guard our territory. We should jealously guard our peace and tranquility. The presence of 𝐒𝐔𝐋𝐀𝐘𝐌𝐀𝐍 is something else. The mandate of 𝐒𝐔𝐋𝐀𝐘𝐌𝐀𝐍 is something else. It should be defined. It's 5 years ago, for God's sake. This is a recognition of the failed governance of reforming your security, of taking care of yourself. And I said this, one way for someone to control you is to make you not believe yourself. Then control your economy. Because he's controlling your security. You are insecure. That's why if you have a woman that doesn't have an income, have a woman that is not knows his value, know her value, they get abused. An independent woman having their own income, independent woman that this thing would not be, or they will not stand for it. This is what is happening to us. This does not mean that we divorce ourselves from Senegal. We still can have a bilateral relationship. We can build our corporations. We can do different things. But Gambia need to stand alone. Gambia need to build capacity. Gambia need to determine. That's the point of an independence. It's possible we have people who have the know-how. Let's elect the people then to do that. Or let's make sure we represent ourselves to do that. Senegal is taking care of themselves. That's why I'm saying this. Why I directed out the elections in Senegal, have decided that Senegal is democratic and is functional. Then the presence of the rebels, it's a criminal act. Gambia should work with Senegal. I'm not saying to go and fight with Senegal in their territory, but cooperate as 2 countries should do when insurgents happen in any of the other countries. Because Gambians would not like Senegal to harbor any insurgent or anybody that is to harm our interests. Then we should not want anything like that to happen. Yes, the rebels are not sheltering in Gambia, but we should not allow them to use Gambia as a fallback position to operate. And we can assure that. We assured that before. Now, that's where the Gambia government should work with Senegal and make sure that the Gambia armed forces are empowered and given the responsibility, the role to play, to be active in defending our territory. That's what we're paying the soldiers for. For God's sake, they're still recruiting. We're spending money on them. We should be proud of them. We should trust them. If the president did not trust them, that's his failure. For 5 years, not building the army you can trust. Let him do something about that, for God's sake. Or Gambians should do something about that then. If he cannot trust them. This is a bad recipe. It's not cooking. It's not going to cook well. Now, what we asked for, I have said that yesterday. Starve the rebels from the resources. Let Gambia not allow the rebels to use Gambia Gambian criminals buying this timber to re-export it. It should be stopped. Let's say it's no re-export of timber from the Gambia, because timber is not coming out from the Gambia. One. And this, if we achieve that, the only domestic market would be available. And then we can work towards controlling the domestic market too, so that the flow of these things can be stopped. One, if that, these people are only interested in the criminality now. They have no vision. They have no capacity to take over Casamas or to win over the Casamas people. The Casamas people are out there voting. If they had that, they would have asked Casamas citizens not to vote for or recognize the elections. They cannot do that because they know that if they make that statement, it will be laughable because the people will go out and vote. They control no territory apart from the environment that they have exploited. Yes, and the Senegalese government should look into themselves to get rid of this rebellion. If they want to, they should be able to do it. They have the troops, they have the know-how. Why are they not doing it? For God's sake. Why are they not? They can get rid of the rebels. And Gambia can protect its border. You see, rebellion, this insurgency is about winning the hearts and minds of the people. You see, I'm just tired to even explain how this thing could be fought. But look, I know there are Gambia army officers that know how to do these things. I know they are equipped to do these things. I know they have the will and they have the courage to do these things. It's up to whether the leadership is ready to do the right thing. I mean the political leadership and the armed forces leadership. I have my doubts, but not in the soldiers. Not in the soldiers. It's up to Gambian people though to determine these things. But we should not allow any of this to be happening in our country and to continue to happen in our country. But the silence from the government have told us a lot. How are these people governing? Are we governing? You know, last time we talked about what is happening to our economy, how we are losing our economy to Senegal. Now, because of it's all interlinked. And remember, even the way the French company went and got the mining license, the exploration license from the Gambia government was a question. It cost the Gambia government for that sake. We should be very careful and understand this thing has been a long one. I didn't want it to come to this long, but it's almost 2.5 minutes, 2 hours, 30 minutes. But I cannot sum up this program. If you come late to this program, please take your time and listen from the beginning. If you just happen to listen to just a bit of it, it might not do a justice to the program, and you might take away something that's not enough of representing what the platform was talking about. And again, I just have to say this again. Never advocate anything against Senegalese citizens. Never advocate anything against Senegalese government. Never advocate for violence. Never advocate for the army to do anything wrong. We should understand the perspective of the analysis, comparative narrative given. It's only to educate ourselves, to be aware, to avoid these things happening. It's to avoid conflicts happening in our sub-region and us. Just to tell us, to exchange, to educate each other, to know that the environment is toxic. right now, to make people to understand the dynamics of the geopolitics and to understand the imperialists, be it the Russians, be it the Chinese, be it the Americans, UK, or whoever it is, how they play their games in order to keep us, the way we are. It's order to empower us, to empower democracy, to empower our people. That's why I give the example of Senegal's democracy and how the opposition came out and did what they did. That's what it's all about. I know people, if I'm doing this disclaimer in a sense, just to make it clear. I am a firm believer of the Senegambia concept, but unequal, mutual. And that is the interest to Gambians and interest to Senegalese. Some of the things done by the Senegalese government, by Macky Sall, is not even to the interest of Senegalese. And I'll tell you, Senegalese would oppose some of the things he does to the Gambia. Yes, some Senegalese citizens would benefit in it. Those people would be support of it. But generally, the Senegalese would not. But people are represented by government. That's why it's difficult to give that narrative. But that is the true narrative. We are bound together. Our development should be bound together. Deforestation in Casamance means deforestation in the Gambia. The climate change, climate warming effect and everything would affect us. These are things we have in common. The criminality in Senegal would affect us. Criminality in Gambia would affect Senegal. Economic development in Senegal would benefit us, and economic development in Gambia would benefit Senegal. Because Gambians we trade and that's where we start on. Look at how much trade that can go between West Africa alone to the level of sustaining a lot of industries. But no, they will not encourage that. What they will do for us to import away from our sub-region. Most of the things Gambia doesn't need to import or even to build a factory for that. Because we might not have the market, but we might build certain things for market in the sub-region. But the sub-region too can build markets, build factories that can supply us. That's how we can depend on. But no, they don't want that to happen. They want us to depend on the Chinese imports, European imports, Chinese technology, European technology, and we can develop all these things for ourselves. Until we understand that, we have leaders that build the capacity for that, crisis would not stop to happen in Africa. The crisis in Africa is the failure and fault of Africans, but again, it's been exploited by external forces. Then the crisis of Africa is not about tribalism or it's about corruption, because the tribalism is highlighted because of corruption. Tribalism is nepotism is the causes of most of these things, not even tribalism. There are cabal of people exploiting our people and using the divisive means of tribalism in order to control us, to be angry among each other, people to kill among each other, rather than to hold them accountable and force them to do the right thing for us. Thank you very much, guys, and have a good night. Jerry Jeff.